supposed to weigh before, and then weigh after.
The Honorable, the President.
Senator Mark.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, if I may continue along the lines that I stopped when we suspended proceedings. Madam President, it is felt that the establishment of a corporate body would go a long way in securing the independence, effectiveness, and accountability of the Parliament and promote overall good parliamentary governance. Madam President, if I may again advise my colleagues that the present governance structure of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago is similar to any government department or government agency. I indicated earlier on that the staff of Parliament are public officers or public servants or contract employees employed through the Public Service Commission, and their terms and conditions of employment are determined by the Civil Service Act and, where applicable, the Chief Personnel Officer. Now, Madam President, financial appropriations follow the same procedures established for the ministries, requiring regular reports and requests for release of funds from the Ministry of Finance. That is how our Parliament goes about securing funds. We go about securing funds just as any other ministry or other government department. We have to apply. We have to wait until we have releases. And that ought not to be so, Madam President. So, Madam President, the process towards reform of the management structure of our Parliament has a long history. It commenced in 1997 when a report of the House Committee of the House of Representatives identified a need for organizational change for the Parliament, which has remained largely unaltered since 1962. So we are going into what? Is it 54 years of independence? And, Madam President, the same parliamentary structure, almost, that we inherited on our independence is the same arrangement and structures that we have 54 years later. We have not advanced. And something is wrong, although efforts have been made through various reports. And, Madam President, if I may also advise that it was in 2000 a select committee established to review a working paper of the Law Commission on the reform of the management structure of Parliament made several recommendations, including the establishment of an independent administrative structure featuring a Parliament Management Board and Commission. So, Madam President, since 2000, efforts were made to establish this Parliament Management Board and a commission to run the affairs of the Parliament. So, Madam President, we are talking about since 1997, and we are in 2016. So it's almost, I would say, about 19 years we have been discussing this issue of providing greater autonomy and independence for the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, in addition, the report of a Commonwealth Parliamentary Association study group on the administration and financing of parliaments held in Tanzania and the Commonwealth Latimer House Principles, which was adopted at the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference or meeting in Abuja, Nigeria, in 2003, both recommended that parliaments should, either by legislation or resolution, establish corporate bodies responsible for providing services and funding for parliamentary purposes and providing for governance of the parliamentary service. So, Madam President, since 2003, the Latimer House Principles, which was signed off by Trinidad and Tobago and a number of other Commonwealth countries, promoted this question and idea of autonomy for our parliament. And we have not really made the kind of progress that we would have liked to make, Madam President. Madam President, in 2011, a cooperation agreement was signed between the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and the United Nations Development Program to implement a project titled Strengthening the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. So again, Madam President, in 2011, there was a cooperation agreement. Now, the functional autonomy of Parliament was one of the key outputs of the joint project and sought to establish a clear separation of powers by eliminating the overlap and influence that currently exists between the legislative and executive arms of government, particularly in the areas of recruitment and financing, Madam President. In 2014, Madam President, if I may just fast forward, a draft legislative proposal called the Draft Houses of Parliament Bill 2014 was referred to a joint select committee, along with a number of other reports and recommendations of the Joint Select Committee established in 2000. Madam President, the Draft Houses of Parliament Bill of 2014 proposal sought to establish an independent, non-partisan parliamentary service authority managed by a board comprised of members of Parliament, which would be empowered to govern all matters of financial and administrative policy. So, Madam President, here the Parliament was moving in a direction to have a parliamentary service authority established, made up of parliamentarians, chaired by the Speaker, and be responsible for the provision of financial and administrative services through policy measures, Madam President. Madam President, the underlying principle behind the proposal is to establish a modern democracy in our country. It is untenable, Madam President, for the executive branch, which falls under the constitutional oversight of the legislative branch, that executive arm or body should possess the legal and administrative capacity to affect the day-to-day operations of the legislature. And that is what we are advancing today, Madam President, that we are in a period in which revolutionary changes have to be brought about if we are to reestablish, or not to reestablish, if we are to effect the constitutional mandate as given to this Parliament as a legislative arm of the state by the Constitution of our country. Madam President, if we are to take responsibility for the constitutional oversight of the executive, which represents one of the many functions that we have to execute as a parliament. There are many other functions that we execute. We make laws. That is one of our main functions, lawmaking. We are also responsible for providing finance for the country. Without parliamentary approval, Madam President, the country will not be able to function. So the Parliament supplies finances to the state, and through the state to the people, through services. That is what the appropriation bill is all about. That is what the budget is all about. So the Parliament carries out that particular function, Madam President. So, Madam President, it was during the 10th Parliament that the Joint Select Committee was established to review the draft legislative proposal. It approved a pre-policy paper entitled Towards an Independent Parliament, Ensuring Parliament's Functional Autonomy. Madam President, this pre-policy paper was circulated to a wide range of stakeholders who were also invited to make submissions on the proposal. Submissions were then received from the Public Service Commission, the Office of the Chief Personnel Officer, as well as staff of the Office of the Parliament, among others. Madam President, to show you the kind of work that was going on during the 10th Parliament, the committee, which is a Joint Select Committee, also met with one Dr. John Patterson, a parliamentary expert on governance, who was engaged by the UNDP in consultation with the Office of the Parliament to assist in advancing the process of functional autonomy of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Madam President, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The work is there. And we have to move and push forward with the work. That is the 11th Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, this Joint Select Committee was unable to complete its work before the prorogation of the 10th Parliament and its ultimate dissolution. But a report was produced on its activities and also adopted by the Parliament on parliamentary autonomy. A preliminary report on appropriate recommendations on parliamentary autonomy was also produced, Madam President. Madam President, the report and policy recognize that there are specific requirements for parliamentary autonomy. Parliament should be serviced by a professional staff independent of the public service. That was one of the first principles or requirements that the report established. It should be serviced by a professional staff independent of the public service. Secondly, Madam President, there should be adequate resources provided to government and non-government backbenchers in order to improve parliamentary impact, and should include provision of, among the following: training for new members, secretarial, office, library, and research facilities. Madam President, we operate in a parliament where in this Senate, we are one-man team, one-woman team. We have no help, Madam President. We don't have a research assistant. We have to do all our work on our own.
True.
Which modern parliament can function properly in that way? And it's serious work, Madam President, that we have to do. So we need staff, we need support, we need for research facilities. Madam President, I must tell you that I did some research, and in the German parliament today, there are over 600 professional research staff at the German Bundestag. And everybody PhD. And so when a German member of parliament speaks in the German Bundestag, they are well researched. Because, Madam President, the price of democracy is very high. It's very costly. And I am saying, Madam President, that we have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that our parliamentarians are provided with the resources necessary for them to perform their duties. And we need assistance. It cannot be the executive alone must have the support. The executive I have no problem with the executive arm of the state. It's an independent arm. But, Madam President, so too, we too are an independent arm, and we need the resources. So, Madam President, what we are saying is that we need training for new members. When new members come to Parliament, they cannot go to the University of the West Indies and learn to be a parliamentarian. The university doesn't offer those kind of courses. We have to provide those members with the ability. We must have the responsibility. We must have the resources to carry out those functions. So, Madam President, I said secretarial, office, library, and research facilities. Madam President, drafting assistance, including private members' bills. We don't have a history of promoting private members' bills. And the reason for that, Madam President, we don't have drafters in our parliament. We don't have a properly well-organized and staffed legal unit, Madam President. There is a legal unit in the parliament, but there are a few members of staff. We're talking about a properly well-resourced, with the appropriate manpower to help, Madam President, any member of parliament who may wish to promote a private member's bill. But, Madam President, if we want to do that now, we have to go and beg lawyers out there to help us draft a bill. We shouldn't be doing that. We should have the resources within our parliament to do that kind of work, Madam President. Madam President, we should establish an all-party committee of parliament to review and administer Parliament's budget, which should not be subject to amendment by the executive. When a serious Parliament draws up its budget and it is approved by the members of the Parliament of that particular Parliament or the Houses of Parliament, Madam President, and we submit that to the Minister of Finance, he cannot change a full stop, a comma, or a sentence. Because we have taken a decision as a parliament, and the Minister of Finance is a member of the board, and he would know exactly what is involved. So we want to drop our budget, we want to approve our budget, and the minister must not amend our budget. That is the kind of power we're talking about when you're talking about parliamentary autonomy. We must have the power to draw up our own budget. And no minister come and tell us, cut here, cut here. He's on the committee, so he must know what is necessary at that time. And that is why, Madam President, it is proposed that the minister be an ex officio member of the commission. Madam President, parliamentary autonomy is also seen as conferring a number of specific rights and responsibilities, which include, Madam President, the ability to obtain appropriate financial resources, freedom of staff from external control, whether by government or a political party. We must be able the control of the parliament over its estate and security arrangements. Freedom of the corporate body from party politics. So, Madam President, when we establish a board and in the final analysis, that board must be non-partisan, even though it is made up of members of parliament, and it must not be driven politically. Otherwise, it will not accomplish its objectives. So, Madam President, high ethical standards are needed, Madam President, and we must also communicate regularly and transparently with the public. So, Madam President, this matter of parliamentary autonomy is almost 20 years old. There are several reports, there are several documents, there is a legislative proposal, there's a lot of work that has been done to put this particular institution in place, and I would want to appeal to the government in accordance with our resolution here, that we agree as a parliament to establish a joint select committee to consider and report within 3 months on a legislative formula for parliamentary autonomy in our country. And, Madam President, it could be done because the work is already there, and a serious joint select committee could accomplish that. And we have the full support of the government, because the government, Madam President, in their manifesto, which is now government policy, has made it abundantly clear that it too is committed to parliamentary autonomy. So we all have agreement, government and opposition. And the independent will speak for itself on the matter of autonomy. But I know the government is committed to autonomy, and the opposition is committed to autonomy of our parliament. And once we are able to get agreement, Madam President, we can move with some degree of haste in getting this particular joint select committee established so that we can begin the work necessary to promote and advance the kind of independence that is so needed and vital if we are to execute the constitutional mandate that is enshrined in our Republican Constitution. We need that autonomy. We need it urgently, and I appeal to the government to support this resolution so that before, I would say, Madam President, before the end of the second session in September of 2017, we would be on our way of establishing parliamentary autonomy in our parliament for the first time, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move.
The motion requires someone to second it.
Madam President, I stand to second, and I reserve my right to speak at a later time.
The motion has been seconded by Senator Amin. Honorable Senators, I will now propose the question for debate. Whereas financial and administrative autonomy of Parliament is an undisputed benchmark of a true democracy, and whereas a joint select committee established during the 10th Parliament to consider proposals for the autonomy of Parliament reported to both houses that parliamentary autonomy should be viewed as a recalibration of the existing relationship between the executive and the legislature. And whereas the government, in adopting the 2015 Manifesto of the People's National Movement as its official policy framework, confirmed its commitment to the principles of parliamentary autonomy. Be it resolved that a joint select committee of Parliament be established to consider and report within 3 months on a legislative formula for parliamentary autonomy in Trinidad and Tobago. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, it's a pleasure and an honor to join this debate relating to the autonomy of the People's Parliament. I had intended to start by reading the entire motion, but 2 people have already done so, so I will not bother. Madam President, this is the 4th private motion this House is debating, this Senate. It started with a very commendable motion raised by Senator Mark on sustainable development goals, which was unanimously passed in the Senate. Then came the cybercrime and cyberbullying motion that was piloted by Senator Melissa Ramkisoon, and again, well thought out motion, and it had the unanimous approval of the Senate. I wouldn't say too much on the central bank motion, but it's par for the course, and you know what the results are. In the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and the cybercrime bullying is how I see this parliamentary autonomy. Senator Mark rightfully said, and he knows that I always like to walk with my book, and we are committed to implementing most, if not all, of the promises that was made here. So I will just take the opportunity to read the third whereas, and whereas the government in adopting the 2015 Manifesto of the People's National Movement as its official policy framework confirmed its commitment to the principle of parliamentary autonomy. Madam President, I just want to go on the record and say officially that Senator Mark is pushing against an open door. And during this term in office, we are committed that parliamentary autonomy, like many other things, will happen in Trinidad and Tobago for the first time, in conjunction with judicial, financial, and administrative autonomy. We are committed to those 2, judicial autonomy, fiscal, financial, and parliamentary autonomy. One wonders why it took 54 years to reach here. But, I mean, the fact is that we are here, and I give the commitment that this is going to happen. But let me just put this whole thing in context once again, and Senator Mark attempted to do that. There are 3 arms of the state: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And let me deal with the executive first, because there are certain things that are cropping up its head in this society as we speak. The executive is headed by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. In all jurisdictions you go to, the executive has been elected into office. And that election gives them the right to govern. In England, you have a monarchy, but the monarchy has absolutely no say in the governance of the country. In America, you have an executive president, the Senate and a Congress. But the executive, which is the presidency and the cabinet of the president, has the power to govern. The Trinidad and Tobago executive, coming out of the post-colonial period, and because of the Marlborough negotiations, when Dr. William, Dr. Kapildev, Ashford Sinanan, and Lionel Sukaran, among others, went up to Marlborough House, they crafted something called the Service Commissions. And the Service Commissions, while the thinking behind it may have had some validity of the time. Senator Mark, for the first time I'm hearing say, no, the Service Commission is a hindrance to the parliamentary staff. But then it also has to be a hindrance to the executive. Because ministries are now flooded with contract workers. And the reason for that, it is because the Service Commission is accountable to no one. And I will take the liberty, because I want to be careful how I tread here, to say that there is a 4th arm of government, the office of the president. Because the president in Trinidad and Tobago has more power than the Queen of England. Because the Queen of England do not appoint service commissions. Even the throne speech in the House of Commons is given to her to read. And here we have a situation where the president appoints the service commission at his own discretion. The president appoints the integrity commission at its own discretion. He appoints the equal opportunities commission at his own discretion, and many other aspects of it. And there's a tendency now with the SSA bill. You all were proposing that the director of the SSA be appointed by the president in consultation with the leader of the opposition and the prime minister. That is defying the constitutional government structure of Trinidad and Tobago. I am just making the point, because one day you will lead, another day we will lead. But the executive has to be allowed to govern, because that is what was elected to do. So we are constrained by the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, the Statutory Authority Service Commission, and the Teaching Service Commission. Every year, through the appropriation bill, the executive is authorized to spend money, it is authorized to collect money. That is where the template of the governance resides. The executive also has authority, an executive authority in the operation of the state enterprise sector. So you have the public service, the state enterprise sector. But we are hamstrung as it relates to the service commission and some of the things that are appointed by the president. It is a legacy item, and it's something we have to look at in the future. Because today, 54 years after, we're talking about parliamentary autonomy. It wasn't discussed in the 60s. It wasn't discussed in the 1976 Republican Constitution. But now we have seen it fit to come to talk about it. And anytime anybody in this country speaks about the potential of abandoning the Service Commission, you are accused of wanting political interference in the governance of the country. But everybody will admit it is the biggest stymie to productivity in Trinidad and Tobago. Because everybody admits the Service Commission is not moving in an aggressive and modern environment in terms of delivery of service. And every ministry is constrained by that. The Ministry of Agriculture, there are hundreds of positions that needs to be filled. And when you mention it, they claim that you want to bring political interference. But you give the minister the right, through his permanent secretary, to employ thousands of contract workers in the public service. I asked the question, probably the time is approaching where we have to seriously look at the Service Commission and their relevance into the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. I say no more on that. Then there's the judiciary. The judiciary is responsible for the administration of justice. I don't intend to debate the judiciary here. In essence, however, to me, it is the most important arm of the state in the context of democracy. Not even the parliament, the judiciary. Because democracy breaks down irrevocably when the judicial system is compromised. The only time you lose absolute confidence in a society is when the judicial system is compromised. As happened in Colombia a decade or so ago. Colombia, look how Colombia has bounced back. So nothing is beyond repair, you know. Pastor Dutton, the Cali and the Medellin cartel, you know about them. I used to go to Colombia when I was in the energy sector in the 80s and early 90s. And as a foreigner, you have to have a bodyguard. And every time you go to the office, you have to take a different route because they'll kidnap you. And today, and the judiciary is corrupted, there were assassination of judges and what have you. Today, Colombia has one of the most booming economy in Latin America. And Colombia has now surfaced as the prime destination for tourists in Latin America. Believe it or not. Beautiful country. So the judiciary is something we have to protect with our lives. I say no more on that. Financial autonomy for the judiciary is something that is seriously on the card with this administration. And just as I promised the Parliament financial autonomy during the course of this term, I'm almost certain that financial autonomy will come to the judiciary even before it comes to the Parliament. Let me deal with the legislature now, which is our Parliament. I sourced most of my comments from this document, which was extensively quoted by Senator Mark. But it really states the Parliament has three major responsibilities: to ensure sound and well-considered laws are passed. This is what we do here every time we meet. For rigorous and informed oversight of the executive, which is what we do also. And finally, to make sure that the citizens of this country are well represented by the members of Parliament whom they elected into office. This is the same parliamentary structure we have had since 1962. On that point, Madam President, I want to give the country and the House this assurance also, that apart from the financial and administrative autonomy for the Parliament, which we are committed to and which will happen during this term, we also want to give this Parliament the commitment that the Parliament during this term will be going back to its place of birth at the Red House. And I know Senator Mark was very critical when the Prime Minister decided to chair a committee for the supervision of the construction of the Red House. Whatever his reasons, but our reason is that the Prime Minister has seen this as such an important issue that he has decided to take personal responsibility for it. Because what has happened in the last 6 or 7 years is a travesty to the state.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And also, the President's House. The Prime Minister has taken the personal responsibility to supervise those two projects. What kind of country are we when our President has to live in an apartment in Flagstaff? And you have a President House that was majestically constructed during the colonial period with marble and limestone. And all you see year in, year out is a big shed over it with scaffolding. The scaffolding contractor must make more money than the cost of the President House and the Red House. Senator Sinanan always brings that to my attention, that the scaffolding contractor, the Red House, probably is a multimillionaire as we speak on scaffolding alone. So we will bring financial autonomy, we will bring back a home for the Red House, for the Parliament in the Red House, because having been in the Red House Parliament chamber, I mean, every time I come and I see this roof so low, I feel to cry. Because if I was a tall person, I would have had to duck. Because when you look at the arch and the dome of the parliamentary chamber, it is majestic. And this building was not constructed for a parliament. This building was constructed as an international finance center. And it will revert to that. And Cabildo Chambers, which is now the office of the Attorney General, will be now the supporting building for the parliamentary staff as we move back into the Red House with, on the other side of St. Vincent Street, the parliamentary staff will be there. The AG is going to the new towers, the Legal Affairs building. Okay, because as we speak, the Ministry of Education towers was open today, and I want to congratulate the Minister of Public Administration and Education for that. And the next towers that will be occupied would be the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Office of the Attorney General. Before the end of this year, we will start retrofitting the Cabildo chambers to host the parliamentary staff. And I just want to make another plug here for Trinidad and Tobago's constitution. In terms of passing of laws, because the first role of the parliament is to ensure sound and well-considered laws are passed. In terms of passing laws, Madam President, the Trinidad and Tobago Parliament is probably one of the most best structured parliaments in the world. And let me quote some examples for you. In the lower house, you must have a government and you must have an opposition. By definition, the government has more seats than the opposition. So, when a bill requires a simple majority, it's smooth sailing in the House, except somebody decides to break ranks, and then there's always the whip. For special majority, you need 2/3, 3/5, 3/4, and that has its own dynamics down there in getting opposition support. As we come to the Senate, it's a point I've made and I'll repeat myself today. If you check how the Senate is composed, the Senate is composed of 16 government senators, one of which will be elevated to the position of President of the Senate, which leaves 15 of us here. 6 opposition senators and 9 independent senators. 9 and 6 is 15. So it's 15 against 15 in the context of debate. So it is incumbent upon the government in debating its bills to try to convince at least one or several...
Senator Mean, Senator Sturge, your voices are now starting to drown out the speaker. Continue, Leader of Government Business.
So it is our duty to convince, because if as a government and we bring in a bill to Parliament and there are 9 independent senators and we cannot convince one of them to vote for the bill, we have to assume something is wrong with the bill. It's just simple logic. And while we will prefer unanimity, or at least to convince 5 out of the 9 or 6 out of the 9 as the case may be, because everybody has their own judgment, I personally, as leader of government business in the Senate, do not like the situation where I have 1 and 2 independent senators voting for me. I will obviously want to have it much more than that. But the point I want to make, Madam President, is when a bill with a special majority comes to this Senate, for a 3/5 majority, we need 18 votes. So 15 plus 3. If it comes for a 2/3 majority, we need 20 votes. 15 plus 5. And it comes for a 3/4 majority, you need 22 votes, which is 7. Now, here is where this thing is so solid. If for whatever reason you have a 3/4 majority bill, which is hitting at the heart of the Constitution, very few clauses go for 3/4. And let us say, perchance, there is some collusion between the government and the opposition. Everything is possible in love and war. Good? Let us say there is some collusion between the government and the opposition. 15 and 5 and 6 is 21. The independents will be the great adjudicator on that special majority bill of 3/4. Most of you haven't really seen it like this over the years, but this, the numerics of the Senate, and I praise Sir Ellis Clark and his team for drafting what was a wonderful and well thought out Republican Constitution. Now I will deal with oversight of the government, of the executive. Parliament's three sound and well-considered laws, I've dealt with that. Rigorous oversight of the executive. The problem we have in this parliament and in parliaments like these for oversight is that the backbench is not big. In the UK, 300 and something members of parliament. The cabinet is the same size as the UNC cabinet, 30 something. It's a little bigger than ours. But you have a big backbench that you can do this. As a matter of fact, I don't want to get too political and critical. In the last UNC cabinet, every single, this is probably the first time it happened in the history of Trinidad and Tobago politics and cabinet, every single member of the House and member of the Senate form part of the government. Let me repeat that, Madam President. Every single member of the House of Representatives, whether it's minister, parliamentary secretary, or minister of state, yes, and every single member of the Senate form part of the executive. Look today, check our model is different. There are only 5 cabinet ministers in the Senate with 1 parliamentary secretary. We have a backbench that we can utilize to provide oversight to the executive. Okay? And in that context, Madam President, I want to compliment the Parliament for the progress it has made over the last several years. I will take the liberty, I'm a fair person, to compliment Senator Mark when he was Speaker of the House in doing the new standing orders. The new standing orders caters for Prime Minister's question time. It caters for urgent question, although I still have a difficulty in 1 hour before the urgent, but sometimes your ministers may not be in the jurisdiction and what have you, so you have people substituting. But the concept of urgent question, I think, is valid. Okay? The idea of you cannot defer questions for more than 2 weeks, or 1 deferral or 2 1-week deferral. It's a step in the right direction, because I remember in the last Parliament that I sat in, questions to be deferred ad infinitum. And also, the joint select committees and the system of joint select committees. And I just want to go on record, Madam Speaker, and say that I think the joint select committee system is working extremely well. I think so. There are 15 joint select committee, no, 14, okay? But I just want to comment, it has been a contentious point, but I think we're getting over that. It is the thinking that joint select committees should be chaired by either the opposition or the independent. Where the standing order so provides, the Public Accounts Committee, the Public Accounts Enterprise Committee is chaired by the opposition. Most of the other committees are chaired by independents. Where the standing orders were silent, the government took the opportunity to appoint chairmen for 4 committees. Committee on National Security, Committee on Energy Affairs, Committee on Foreign Affairs, and the Committee on Human Rights, Equality, and Diversity. And I just want to go on the record, Madam President, in saying that on these committees, and in all the joint select committees, no member of this government can be accused of deliberately trying to protect the executive. On the Standing Committee of Energy, which Colin Booth, Minister of Finance, is the chairman, I am the vice chairman, we have been the first to bring BP under the radar and to speak about all these tax write-offs they were getting. We who made it public. Land and Infrastructure, chaired by Senator Crease. We all contribute. And most importantly, let me give my colleague, the Minister of Agriculture, it is at the Joint Select Committee that the whole issue of chickens and who selling 5-year-old chicken and couple things. And he is the Minister of Agriculture in conjunction with the Ministry of Trade. Nothing was hidden from the people. And it is we as a government who brought that to the fore. And today now the situation is being regularized. So it is wrong to assume that because we are part of the executive, we will not do our responsibility to the Parliament. Because when we sit on a joint select committee, we sit here as members of Parliament doing a job. Okay, obviously you cannot have you sitting on a joint select committee where you are the line minister. That's a conflict of interest. But I can give this House, the Senate, the assurance that in our work on the joint select committees, we would be doing our job in a way that doesn't jeopardize our integrity. Finally, Madam President, the Parliament's responsibility is to make sure the members of Parliament do a proper job in terms of representing the people. And again, I want to compliment the Parliament over the last 5 or so, 7 years, where new systems have been put in place. Now, most members of Parliament can have one main office and 2 sub-offices. So most members of Parliament can have up to 3 offices in the constituency. There are MP staff. There's proper signage that is apolitical. And I just want to compliment the Parliament again and making an extra effort to make sure that MPs' offices are not political offices. A PNM MP's office is not a PNM constituency office. And the same token, a UNC constituency office member of Parliament is not a UNC office. I just want to, again, I think I hold the Parliament responsible for this. The member of Parliament for Faizabad had his office painted in UNC yellow. Okay? I was recently I saw that it has been repainted. And it's still a UNC MP, but I'm almost sure that has been initiated by the Parliament, because at the level of representation, we have to give the voters and the population and the community the impression and the assurances that as members of Parliament, although we are not elected members of Parliament, that you are independent and you are willing to treat everybody free and fair. Another point of the Parliament, and this is a PNM proposition, which we hope again to implement in this year, not this year, in this term, is the issue of the accounting office. Because
Honourable Senators, there is a standing order about the use of electronic devices. Guidelines have also been issued about the use of electronic devices. Where must we go from here? We're all adults, and hopefully with those guidelines and reading and understanding of the standing orders, we understand how to conduct ourselves in the chamber. So could I please ask that all of those electronic devices, you put them on silent, okay? Continue, Leader of Government business.
okay. Yes, Madam President, the accounting office. Because to me, this is a very innovative idea that has really found root in this PNM administration. You see, because no matter how impressive the Joint Select Committees work, their oversight is post facto. So when the Auditor General submits a report, and it was very well articulated by Senator Chris, it's 10 years old. You debating the administrative report of a corporation for 2007, 2008, 2009. This is not an academic exercise, because the players, they are no longer even in the job, so you can't even hold a physical person accountable. The person who is coming to defend the report has had absolutely no bearing on what is there in the report. So all these Joint Select Committees are post facto, Auditor General report, and when you bring them to account, it is a post facto accounting. What this accounting office is trying to do is give a sort of online monitoring process. So you can have actual ongoing audits. As a member of Parliament, you can raise issue with a contract. You must know when you visit a place, if a contract is going haywire, you know. You just see equipment start to dismantle. You just see the work stop. And then you can bring that to the accounting office, and it will be investigated immediately. So you can nip issues in the bud. And to me, this has a tremendous amount of strength, because it will stop wastage, it will stop leakage, and hopefully it will stop potential corruption. So to me, this is the most innovative aspect of this new parliamentary agenda. The creation of this accounting office, where it could provide online monitoring, not in real time, but in a reasonable time within the fiscal year. So you don't have to come to post facto accounting, like even say the finance committee meetings of the House, which reviews the budget after the budget cycle has been finished. And Madam President, I just want to go on record to say today, and I'll be brave in saying some of these things, but I think the Parliament has improved tremendously. Yep. And I will go even further to say that in the entire public service, I think the Parliament has the most professional staff and professional group of people. The issue of financial autonomy, Madam President, has been well articulated here. I will just read from this document, page 37. The relevant legislation should include provisions for one, and Senator Mark articulated this, a parliamentary service authority, which is the form of a body corporate, and an authority board with appropriate membership vis-a-vis opposition, independent, and government, vesting the authority with land, property, rights, assets, obligations and, of the former department, powers and functions for the authority enabling it to fulfill its policy set out above. The clerk of the House. This legislation is proposing the clerk of the House to be appointed by the President in consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. I have no major objection to that. It calls for the creation of a House of Parliament Service Authority Fund, which is an instrument in which you can get your grant, and we will work out the matrix and the algorithm as to how you allocate the fund, whether it has a tribunal as Tobago 4%, or whether the Parliament will be entitled to 2% of the national budget, because Senator Mark was bravado in saying, what the Parliament put to the government, they cannot change a comma, a dot, to a tie, but the Parliament doesn't raise revenue. So the executive has a responsibility to the population to manage the revenue versus expenditure. So I know he was in gusto, and he gets animated when he speaks about this matter. But we have to find a formula that is reasonable in the context of current environment. An authority bank account or accounts, and the clerk to prepare the authority to approve estimates for inclusion and etc., the employment, transfer, and secondment of staff to the Parliament. I agree with him totally. I'm a member of the Cabinet, and traveling has come to the Cabinet for approval. To me, that is not necessary. Okay? The Parliament is led by a Speaker, a President of the Senate, a Clerk of the House, a Clerk of the Senate. These are very, very competent people. Okay? And there's absolutely no problem in handing over autonomy for and I want to just quote from page 53, general conclusion. The ultimate purpose of autonomy is to ensure that the Parliament better fulfills its core function, make Parliament autonomous. Autonomy flourishes in a parliamentary culture of high ethical standards. Day-to-day impact of the autonomy falls in the official parliamentary administration, etc., etc. Madam President, I want to go on record to say that this administration supports in its entirety the idea of autonomy of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. The constraints that we presently have hopefully will no longer be there. I want to close by quoting the strategic plan statement from the House of Commons, and it says, the key part of the strategy includes the following, and I quote, our vision is that the House of Commons will be valued as a central institution of our democracy, effective in holding the government to account, scrutinizing legislation, and representing the diverse views of the electorate. It will be seen both in the UK and abroad as a model of good practice and innovation, and will provide value for money. Members of Parliament will have the information, advice, support, and technology they need to be effective in their work and to engage closely with their constituents. I will now finally, Madam President, paraphrase this. Our vision is that the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago will be valued as a central institution of our democracy, effective in holding the government to account, scrutinizing legislation, and representing the diverse views of the electorate. The diverse view of the electorate. It will be seen both in the UK, it will be seen both in Trinidad and Tobago and abroad as a model of good practice and innovation, and will provide value for money. Members of Parliament will have the information, advice, support, and technology they need to be effective in their work and to engage closely with their constituents. Madam President, the government will support this motion, and with that, I thank you very much.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move that the Senate do now adjourn to Tuesday, the 5th of July, 2016 at 1:30 p.m.
No, Madam President, no. Standing Order 13.
We have had an interpretation. Sorry.
Madam President, Standing Order 13.
Madam President, put the motion. Can I be allowed to? Thank you. Honorable Senators, but before I put the motion, I can anticipate that there's some debate about the Standing Order 13 and Leader of Government Business. Have you spoken to the bench leaders to just discuss what you propose to be doing on Tuesday?
No, not really, but okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
The House is sitting on Friday on the bail amendment bill, and if it is passed, it is our intention to debate that bill next week, Tuesday.
I'm going to suspend for 5 minutes just to allow some discussion to take place. I'm listening to what the Leader of Government Business has said. I would ask everyone to just have a look at Standing Order 13, have some discussion among the benches. I will come back. 5 minutes will be enough. So I will be back so we will suspend for 5 minutes.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament. You're viewing the Parliament Channel 11, also broadcasting on 105.5 FM.
Senator Alison Baksh was appointed a government senator on September 23, 2015, at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Baksh is a member of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee and the State Enterprises Committee. Senator Melissa Ramkissoon was appointed an independent senator on September 23, 2015, at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Ramkissoon is a member of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. Senator Sarah Boodoo was appointed a government senator on September 23, 2015, at the beginning of the 11th Parliament. Ms. Boodoo is Vice Chairman of the Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity.
Parliament Outreach.
The roles and responsibilities of an MP is to ensure that he carries out about his duties and that he makes sure that his constituency is being taken care for.
The lecture series today was very informative, especially from Mr. Hamid Ghani. He made me very aware of what is mostly the main role of an MP, what happens, what ministers are supposed to do, and what processes the Parliament goes through in deciding a bill.
I think the role of an MP is to seek the interests of the people in the area, deal with the matters that are pending, and like give everybody a fair chance to state their problems and things that they think the MP should do to uplift the area.
Parliament Outreach. Check our website for showtimes, ttparliament.org. Parliament Outreach.
Today I learned that the MP not only sees, well, based on the area that he is elected from, but he also has a lot to do with the Parliament and what areas and what factors they bring about. And I learned that they are more than just sitting there and debating and getting against each other and bringing for the betterment of the community.
I learned that anybody could become a member of the Parliament, and they help with the country a lot, and we should have a lot of thanks, and that this program should be carried around in more schools so that more people will understand these benefits.
Parliament Outreach. Check our website for showtimes, ttparliament.org.
Senator Jennifer Raffoul was appointed an independent senator on September 23, 2015, at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Raffoul is a member of the Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity. Senator the Honorable Christine Kangaloo was elected President of the Senate at the ceremony.
Honourable Senators, I understand that discussions are ongoing, so I will suspend? Yeah, I'll suspend for a further 15 minutes. Okay.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
Our democracy was created for us to be free.
And we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, have asserted our belief in a democratic society
in which all persons may,
to the extent of our capacity, play some part in the institutions of national life,
and thus develop and maintain due respect for lawfully
constituted authority.
Welcome to the Parliament, where the people whom we elect come to debate issues of national importance and decide on what best represents the voices, the concerns, and the best policies for the citizens of our country. We are going to examine two important figures in our Parliament, our presiding officers.
Have you ever heard of the presiding officers?
No. Who are they?
Well, the presiding officers are responsible for the smooth functioning of the many proceedings of our bicameral parliament.
bicameral?
That just means that we have two legislative or parliamentary chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives, for checks and balance.
The roles of the presiding officers are truly impressive. These officials hold the fourth and fifth highest offices in our land. They are the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. Ideally, the Senate seeks to represent and take into account the views and interests of those in society who may be insufficiently reflected within the elected House. The House of Representatives is made up of the elected representatives of the 41 constituencies.
House of Representatives?
That's where the members of parliament who've been elected to represent their constituencies meet to debate national issues.
So, what about the Senate?
The Senate comprises of persons specially appointed by the President of Trinidad and Tobago, the Prime Minister, and the Leader of the Opposition.
So, the President of the Senate presides over the Senate.
And the Speaker of the House presides over the House of Representatives.
And together, they are the presiding officers.
They are the first ones elected by their respective houses after the general election, so that the business of the houses can proceed.
The presiding officers ensure that all parliamentary debates are conducted in an orderly way. Parliament members must catch the eye of the presiding officer to be granted permission to speak, and all parliamentary members must address the presiding officer with respect as Mr. or Madam Speaker, or Mr. or Madam President, because presiding officers have the highest position in any parliamentary house.
The presiding officers also ensure that parliamentary rules and the law are followed during debating, regulating the time for speaking, so that Parliament runs smoothly. They also have the final say on any dispute using the rules of procedure.
So that is why they're called the presiding officers?
Yes, because their main function is to be the referee of each house, as they guide and regulate the proceedings. This is symbolized by the maces of each house.
Maces?
Each house has an ornamental mace as a symbol of the presiding officer's authority.
Why a mace?
Well, it has its roots in European monarchy as a real weapon to guard the monarch. But as weaponry and government evolved, it became a symbol of authority vested in democratic government.
The ornamental mace is carried in and out of Parliament by the Marshal. It precedes and leaves with the presiding officers of each house. Each house has its own special design on its mace.
Other than presiding in the chambers, the presiding officers also have ceremonial duties,
where they participate in the opening of Parliament and sometimes lead major parliamentary delegations to other countries or attend regional conferences here in TNT. High commissioners and ambassadors come one and come all to pay courtesy calls on the presiding officers in our country to foster deeper relationships between nations and legislatures. Additionally, the President of the Senate can in fact fulfill the role and duties of the President of Trinidad and Tobago when he is out of the country or ill.
So that is a lot of work for just one role. Do they have any help?
Well, there's the Vice President of the Senate and the Deputy Speaker of the House, in addition to the Clerk of the House and other parliamentary officers who are well versed in parliamentary procedure and rules. There are also ways in which other key personnel in Parliament assist the presiding officers in the execution of their third major function.
You mean there's more?
Yes, the presiding officers are also the administrators for the Parliament.
They ensure that all is secure in the Parliament building and its surroundings for the safety of its members. The Marshal of the Parliament as well as the Parliament Police Unit are charged with this responsibility.
Both presiding officers also chair several committees of Parliament, such as the Committee of Privileges, which deals with ensuring that the rights that are afforded to members are not abused in any way. There's also the Standing Orders Committee, which reviews the standing orders from time to time to make changes to the rules that govern how Parliament functions.
So how do you know what to look for in a presiding officer?
Well, they must be impartial, independent and authoritative.
The presiding officers have big responsibilities in the Senate and House of Representatives. And you know what that means? That they must have excellent qualities. Once elected, the presiding officers must put aside all party affiliations and be impartial in every ruling made to make sure that every voice is heard with equal representation, balancing the majority with the minority. They must embody the authority invested in them, allowing for respect from one and all, as they are the representatives of the Parliament itself in its powers, proceedings, and dignity.
The presiding officers have important roles in maintaining checks and balances in the Parliament, the seat of our democracy.
We hope that you got a glimpse into how much responsibility a presiding officer has, and that maybe one day you too might aspire to be elected to such an important office to serve your country.
From United Nations Television, this is UN in Action.
Since fighting erupted in Ukraine in April 2014, more than 1 million people have been displaced inside the country. So far, some 6,000 Ukrainians have lost their lives in the conflict as separatists and Ukrainians fight over territory in the eastern part of the country. The Ilyushenko family escaped a few months ago as battle raged on in the town of Delbasove in central Donetsk, says Anya, the eldest daughter.
Хотелось подальше уехать. Просто подальше уехать от этого кошмара.
They found safe haven in Kiev, the country's capital. Grandmother Lyobov says she feared for her family's safety.
Только она проехала, снаряд разрывается, вот, наша машина, немного дальше, аж подпрыгнула, так, благо там задержались, чуть-чуть. Если бы мы ехали следом, нас бы уже тоже не было.
The Ilyushenko story is not unique. In southern Ukraine, Ludmila Komenko and her husband lost their home in the frontline town of Vinogradno.
Я сама себя успокаиваю тем, что, наверное, Господь направил этот снаряд, потому что в доме никого не было. Что, может, наш дом спас и соседей, что там ребенок в данный момент находился.
Ludmila came back to retrieve what she could from the rubble. She hopes to return home when the conflict ends, but many elderly people have nowhere to go. Alone, poor, and weak, they were brought to this shelter for their own safety. Anna is lost in time. At 82 years old, she thinks it's the Second World War.
Нема нікого, ні брата, ні матері, нікого, померли всі.
Over the hill, the shelling continued. A new truce deal reached in Belarus's capital, Minsk, in February 2015 may prevent the situation from further deteriorating in Ukraine. UN Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Jeffrey Feltman.
Eastern Ukraine still appears to be in limbo as we await full implementation of the Minsk package of measures.
Вот самое большее, что пугает, это что дальше? Самое большее. Вот это вот, сидишь в неизвестности. Сколько ты тут сможешь просидеть? Надо же как-то работу какую-то, куда-то обосноваться. Не знаю.
The road ahead will be difficult, but it is critical that all concerned strictly adhere to and commence good faith implementation of this agreement.
If the agreement takes hold, there's hope, says Ludmila.
Мы здесь будем жить, и все здесь будут. Здесь будет мир, и все вернутся сюда.
This report was produced by Mary Ferreira for the United Nations.
You're viewing the Parliament Channel 11, also broadcasting on 105.5 FM.
The Honourable Shamfa Kuju was elected to represent the constituency of Tobago West as a member of the 11th Parliament following the general election of September 7, 2015. She was appointed Minister of Tourism on September 11, 2015. Ms. Kuju is a member of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, the Parliamentary Broadcasting Committee, the Committee on Foreign Affairs, the Social Services and Public Administration Committee, and the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives. Senator Sophia Choate, Senior Counsel, was appointed an independent senator on September 23, 2015 at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Choate is the chairman of the Finance and Legal Affairs Committee and is a member of the Whistleblower Protection Bill 2015 Committee and the Statutory Instruments Committee of the Senate. Mrs. Christine Niwalu Hussain was elected to represent the constituents of Kumuto Manzanilla on September 7, 2015 as a member of the 11th Parliament. Mrs. Niwalu Hussain is a member of the Social Services and Public Administration Committee and the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament. Parliament Outreach.
One thing I remembered was the way in which Parliament takes an issue and deals with the issue. You know, sometimes from an area our community fights about, we tend to, well, we have so much resources, and why does an issue take so long to be dealt with, and how the President of the Senate handle the issues and the procedures in which they take an issue and deal with it. That was my most memorable.
From this lecture today, I learned about the different parts and the arms of government and how they react to different circumstances and the decision making and who takes up the decision making to Parliament.
Parliament Outreach. Check our website for showtimes. ttparliament.org.
The most difficult thing about being Prime Minister would have been to coordinate the members of the government to ensure that everybody was on point with what they had to do and were familiar with the procedure and with the actual material of the debates. We weren't able to organize as many meetings and caucus sessions and as many information sessions as the opposition because of our numbers. I mean, 29 versus 14, and some Tobago members, some from North, South. It was difficult. I think we pulled it off pretty well, though. We managed to piece together a cohesive debate and we passed the motion, so I would classify it as a success.
The honourable members, the result for the division is 29 voting for, 14 voted against and 0 abstentions. The motion is duly passed.
To get young people interested in any particular idea, I really think you need to advertise, you need to market, and you need to make it interesting and comprehensible to the young people. I disagree with the notion that young people are uninterested in politics and governance because, okay, well, I'm in sixth form at present, and I do humanities subjects primarily. I do chemistry, but that's because I love chemistry. In my literature and sociology classes, we have extensive talks on the politics and governance of the country, and I don't think that, I would say that most of the youth that I interact with, they're not uninformed at all, and they're very interested.
Experience that I gained as Speaker of the House would have been how to control a crowd, and also how to carry myself in a manner of respect and of dignity, because the Speaker has a history attached to it of someone who is seen as high esteem within the general public and within the political arena. And to me, being given that option and that portfolio, I was very happy to know that I had to carry myself in that manner, and the other youth parliamentarians looked at me for guidance and for leadership. So I think that's the experience that I'll take with. So from here on in to basically, how do I become a lot more mature? I don't think that politics is going to be a career path for me. I think I'm more leaning towards and heading towards the area of diplomacy. My degree is in international relations, and I will hope to specialize in peace and conflict resolution. So I believe that diplomacy is more my career path, but if the government wishes to employ me as a speaker full-time, I would have no problem. But not politics, but more so diplomacy and representing Trinidad and Tobago in the United Nations.
Senator Nadine Stewart was appointed a government senator on September 23, 2015 at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Stewart is a member of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Committee and the Social Services and Public Administration Committee. Senator Khadija Amin was appointed an opposition senator on September 23, 2015 at the start of the 11th Republican Parliament. Ms. Amin is a member of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Committee, the Government Assurances Committee, and the Social Services and Public Administration Committee. Mrs. Glenda Jennings-Smith first entered Parliament as the representative for Toko Sangre following the general election of September 7, 2015. She was appointed Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of National Security on February 2, 2016. Mrs. Jennings-Smith is a member of the Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity, the Land and Physical Infrastructure Committee, the Standing Orders Committee of the House of Representatives, and the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives. Mrs. Vidya Gayadeen Gopi Singh first entered Parliament as the elected representative for Urupuch West following the general election of September 7, 2015. Mrs. Gayadeen Gopi Singh is a member of the Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity, the Standing Orders Committee of the House of Representatives, and the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives.
From United Nations Television, this is UN in Action.
Kung Pam was once a successful farmer with land in Vietnam's fertile Mekong Delta. Today, Pam lives on a small allowance from his children. And his farm? It's out there, underwater, a kilometer or so off the coast of this beach.
Dưa hấu, khoai lang, rồi đậu phộng, rồi thời gian bị thủy triều nó dâng lên á, rồi nước nó tràn vô là canh tác không được. Thành ra nó bể á, thì nó bị nước thủy triều nó dâng lên cao á, nó ngập á.
Thousands of coastal farmers have already lost their land and incomes. But now sea level rise is threatening even more farmers upstream. During the dry season, salty seawater easily flows inland. contaminating freshwater irrigation canals, says Truyen Ming Pham, Director of the Department of Agriculture.
Trong những năm gần đây thì do cái biến đổi khí hậu thì nó có ảnh hưởng rất lớn đến cái sản xuất là nông nghiệp nói chung, sản xuất cây lúa nói riêng của tỉnh, làm ảnh hưởng tới cái thu hẹp cái diện tích sản xuất lúa.
60 kilometers upstream, rice farmer Bin Tak would never have imagined seawater entering his irrigation canal. But today, it's killing his rice crop. This season, he expects his harvest will be half of what he once reaped.
Lúc trước tôi cũng nếm nước như nêm xong thì tôi bơm nước lên ruộng. Mà hiện tại giờ thì ruộng tôi đã không có phát triển được như xưa nữa, nó cũng bị vàng, nó chết hết mớ nữa, cho nên là chắc phải không dám bơm nước này lên nữa rồi.
Farmers say they are in desperate need of information and ideas that will help them adapt to climate change. And for the first time, they might get the help they're looking for. Over the next 6 years, the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, in cooperation with the Vietnamese government, will invest $50 million in activities like monitoring and forecasting salinity, improving irrigation canals and dikes, and helping farmers find income alternatives that might include growing something other than rice.
Bên cạnh đó thì cũng trầm trọng thì có thể mình sẽ chuyển đổi một cái số cái diện tích trồng lúa để cho nông dân chuyển qua là nuôi trồng thủy sản mà.
Here in this lab at Tra Vinh University, researchers are looking for species that are more tolerant to salt water and could provide a good income to farmers. As temperatures increase, rice farmers may have few options. Warmer weather brings on more pests and crop diseases, and when humidity is high and temperatures exceed 36 degrees Celsius, the rice pollen itself becomes sterile, threatening an even larger collapse. In the meantime, rice farmers here gather with local officials and project staff to begin discussing their adaptation strategies. For farmer Bin Tak, the goal is simple: to stay one step ahead of climate change. This report was produced by Joan Leviton for the United Nations.
From United Nations Television, this is UN in Action.
Tajikistan, in the heart of Central Asia, the poorest former Soviet republic and also one of the youngest, with 70% of the population under 30. Now, young Tajiks are stepping forward, eager to help their nascent republic succeed. In a few days, 19-year-old Mubarak Rustam Zoda, along with 63 other youth leaders, for the first time will publicly debate issues that matter to them. All with the hope that the government, unpracticed in free speech, is ready to listen. It's a fragile opportunity to push forward democratic expression. Mubarak lives in Kulob city in Katian province, which shares a porous border with Afghanistan.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, teacher. Take a seat.
She is studying to become an English teacher at Kulob State University.
Who's ready just now? If someone's ready, please hands up.
من یک چیزی بهترین رو میخواستم که همه در ساحه معارف باشد برای پیشروی آن. همه میخواستم که سیستم معارف دیگرگون شود.
For example, she is happy today. She is. It is simple sentence. Today.
Independence for this country in 1990 came with sacrifices. One was the loss of Soviet funding of state institutions, which devastated the quality of education, especially in the rural areas where 85% of the population live.
Unhappy. چقدر که ما می‌دیم جامعه بدون همین زن پیشروی زن و ترقی نمی‌کنه جامعه. شما فهمیدین که لیدر کی به دست آید؟ همه دونین که کی لیدر شدن کی راهبر شدن میتواند؟ میدونین برای چی؟ یگون کس معلومه دارن؟
Mubarak was trained in social outreach and women's rights by a local organization called Youth of the 21st Century, which receives financial support and guidance from the United Nations Democracy Fund. Their focus is on helping young people have a voice in the way their country is run. Mubarak will be a key figure at the country's National Debate Center, a youth forum where young people will come together for the first time to have an open dialogue with a government official on how to best solve the problems facing their country.
پیش از برآمد کردن کمتر ولی من در هیجان هستم و کوشش میکنم که خوب برآمد کنم. ولی اگر که همین مکتب‌ها دعوتی باشن از سبب پس بودن موزیم.
Я насчет образования хочу сказать одно. Наша самая большая проблема – это коррупция. И я не знаю, почему не хочет. И даже по этой кредитной системе очень многие просто платят деньги.
Tajikistan's first deputy of the Committee on Youth Affairs has come to hear what the young leaders have to say.
تدبیر دوم بودم اشتراکچانی محفل من آماده هستم که به سوالهای شما جواب بدم.
مثلا بیشتر همین امکانیت نمیشد برای جوانان که یگون کس از حکومت آید اومده همین پرابلم‌های خود رو روبرو بحث کنند و حل نمایند و این برای ما شانس بهترین بود که
Mubarak is one of her country's pioneers, laying the foundation for a stronger democracy for the next generation. This report was produced by Kat Patterson for the United Nations.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
All I want is 5 years, and if you're not satisfied with me, you're free to try someone else. These are the words of Leo Henry Devines on his campaign for the 1986 elections, which he won. He never got to serve out his term because his promising career was cut short by an assassin's bullet. Born in Tobago in November 1932, Leo Henry Devines was the 7th of 13 children. Leo attended the Goodwood Primary School. He spent half of his life in Diego Martin, working his way up from purchasing manager. He founded his own company, Magley Construction and General Enterprises, and also served as chairman of the El Socorro Community Center. He said that his wanting to help his country and his people is what made him enter politics. Leo's first foray in the political arena came in 1981 when he campaigned with Carl Hudson Phillip of the Organization for National Reconstruction, the ONR, for the Diego Martin Central seat. But Carl Hudson Phillip was defeated. That defeat didn't stop Devines, however, who continued his social work in the area. In the campaign for the 1986 elections, he explained that he never believed he would contest the seat, but his colleagues expressed profound confidence in him, which made him change his mind. Although I never felt that I would be going up for a candidate in the national election, I spent the last 2 years out there with the people, sharing their problems and insisting that they be helped. He had mobilized grassroots support, which would help him significantly in his political career. He championed the cause of his neighbors in the interest of a healthier environment and a better standard of living. Devines was instrumental in establishing a booster pump on Diamond Boulevard on November 21, 1983. He made water the main issue in his campaign since 1981. With the support of his community behind him, Devines was victorious in the 1986 elections when he won over the People National Movement's candidate Joe Lakis. Devines ran under the National Alliance for Reconstruction banner. In his campaign, he said, "You don't have to ask me, just go out in the streets and the people will tell you about me." And so they did. They bared testimony to Devines as a man of his word, a hard worker, a man of integrity. Leo was sworn in as parliamentary secretary in the office of the Prime Minister on January 13, 1988. He was later made minister in that same office. Devines acted as Minister of Food Production and Labor Management and was acting as Minister of Public Utilities and Land Settlement. Dr. Bo Tiwari describes Leo Devines as an unassuming man who worked tirelessly without asking for anything in return. Sadly, he is best remembered for the circumstances surrounding his death. Leo Devines was attending Parliament on July 27, 1990. The time was 6:05 in the evening when gunmen from the Jamaat al-Muslimin stormed the parliamentary chamber, taking everyone hostage.
Who is the Prime Minister tonight?
The attack was brutal. The Red House was shot at and shelled. A B-300 machine gun left its mark on the ground floor in the southern end of the building. The militants also left their mark on Mr. Devines. He was shot in the ankle during the attack, was held hostage with his wounds until he was released on the following.
Madam President, I beg to move that this Senate do now adjourn to Tuesday, 5th July 2016 at 1:30 p.m. During that sitting, we will be dealing with the bail amendment bill, and time permitting, we would be handling the two motions under committee business. The first one dealing with the Joint Select Committee on Government Assurances, and the other one is the first report of the Standing Orders, the Senate Standing Orders Committee. First session, 2015-2016 of the 11th Parliament.
Honourable Senators, before I put the motion to adjourn to the House, there's clearly been some debate about the meaning of the words in Standing Order 13. I have read Standing Order 13, and having read it, clearly I'm of the view that it requires an interpretation because the wording is unclear. And the words first week do not convey an actual date. So in my view, honourable members, adjourning to the 5th of July is adjourning to a date in the first week of July. Yes? So that is my interpretation of it. I will now put, so that to adjourn to the 5th of July falls within, it does not infringe Standing Order 13. Okay? Senator Amin, you want me to repeat it? The words in the standing order say that no sitting shall be held from the first week in the month of July. Those words do not, the first week in the month of July is not a specific date. So adjourning to the date that has been suggested, the 5th of July, does not infringe these words because you're adjourning to a date in the first week in the month of July. Okay? So I shall now put the motion to the House. Honorable Senators, the question is that this Senate do now adjourn to Tuesday, the 5th of July, 2016 at 1:30 p.m. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no.
No. Division.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Mrs. Gopi-Schoon?
Yes.
Mrs. Batiste Primus?
Yes.
Mr. Rambarat?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Ms. Boodoo?
Yes.
Mr. Coppin?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Miss Bash?
Yes.
Mr. De Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Dookie?
Yes.
Mr. Sinana?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Mark?
No.
Mr. Solomon?
No.
Miss Amin?
No.
Mr. Sturge?
No.
Mr. Samuel? Mr. Ramdeen?
No.
Dr. Mahabir?
No.
Mr. Shriki Soon?
No.
Miss Ramki Soon?
No.
Mr. Kreese?
No.
Miss Raful?
No.
Mr. Richards?
No.
Mr. Dottin?
No.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
Madam President, the result of division is 16 for, 13 against, 0 abstention.
Honorable Senators, the results of the division are as follows. 16 voted for the motion to adjourn to the 5th of July, 13 voted against. So the motion to adjourn to the 5th of July has been carried. May I just say one thing? Two things actually. Every senator is entitled to his or her own vote. So sometimes I'm hearing comments coming from certain members when other members vote, and that is unacceptable. That's the first thing. The second thing is, clearly, this issue of Standing Order 13 should be looked at by the Standing Orders Committee when we move into the next session of Parliament. Okay? And it will be instructive for members to go back and understand what was the reasoning that led to this standing order being incorporated. It's a new standing order for members, so that all members will understand where the standing orders, how they came to be. Okay? So, Honorable Senators, this Senate now stands adjourned to Tuesday, the 5th of July, 2016 at 1:30 p.m.